You know, when we picture stepping into history, there's this expectation of perfect preservation.
Right, like a museum.
Yeah, exactly, like stepping into a snow globe. You cross the threshold, the modern world just sort of melts away, and you're instantly rubbing shoulders with kings and queens in these pristine, quiet, echoing halls.
It's a beautifully curated fantasy. I mean, we want the aesthetic of time travel without the friction of the 17th century or the harsh reality of the 21st, for that matter.
We really do prefer our history completely sanitized.
Oh, absolutely. We want it comfortable.
But then you look at the raw data, like the ground-level reports from the ultimate symbol of historical luxury, and that pristine little glass globe completely shatters.
It really does.
Because we're looking at a landscape today that is defined by pure, unfiltered chaos. So welcome to the Travel Podcast by ExcursionPass.
Glad to be here.
We know you listen because we treat every destination like we're right there with you. We try to anticipate every single objection and, hesitation you might have before booking a trip.
Right. It's like listening to a couple of experts who have actually lived the experience and are sharing every little detail with you.
Exactly. We try to tell it so well that it feels like you're actually living the experience while you listen. And, we try to have some fun and make a few jokes along the way, too.
Hopefully we are at least mildly entertaining.
I like to think so. Anyway, today we are taking on a really fascinating mission for this deep dive. We are exploring the stark reality of visiting the Palace of Versailles in the summer of 2026.
And it is quite a reality check.
It is, because what we have in front of us is a stack of sources that tell two wildly conflicting stories. We have this incredibly comprehensive and honestly very heated set of TripAdvisor reviews from July of 2026.
Pitted against a detailed tour listing from ExcursionPass.
Right, a tour that is essentially trying to offer a lifeline through the madness.
The contrast is just staggering. You have the promise of this perfectly curated royal experience on one side, and then the sheer survival mode described in these recent reviews on the other. It really forces a reevaluation of what a bucket list destination actually looks like on the ground,
Yeah, today is all about that clash. Like, how does the ultimate symbol of 17th century absolute monarchy hold up against a 21st century summer heat wave?
And just the crushing weight of mass tourism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But before we get into the fainted tourists, the firefighters, and the crumbling infrastructure, we really have to understand the pull first.
Right. Why are people even going?
Yeah. We have to look at why over 28,000 people have taken the time to review this site, and why you, as a traveler, probably still have this on your non-negotiable must-do list for France.
Because you really can't appreciate the modern frustration without first understanding the historical ambition of this place. I mean, Versailles was never designed to be just a big house.
Well, no, not at all.
By 1692, Versailles was the epicenter of the known world. It hosted the entire French court.
Everyone who was anyone.
Exactly. We are talking about grand balls, banquets, and visiting nobility from all over the globe, all concentrated in one place just to keep them under the watchful eye of the king.
The scale of opulence here is almost hard to wrap your head around, even by today's billionaire standards.
Yeah.
I mean, you are dealing with a 2,000-acre estate.
2,000 acres. Just think about that. Meticulously manicured lawns, ornate fountains, and these whimsical gardens.
It's basically a small city.
It really is. And those fountains alone are a fascinating engineering marvel. They didn't just build a few water features. They built a mix of 50 different fountains featuring towering geysers, mythical figures, and waterfalls.
Including that famous dragon-framed mirror pool, right?
Yes, exactly.
And we have to pause on the fountains for a second because understanding how they worked in the 17th century is just mind-blowing.
It's incredible.
Like, they didn't have modern electric pumps. So how do you force towering geysers of water into the sky in the 1600s?
Well, it required an absolute army of engineers and laborers. They literally had to alter the landscape. Yeah. They built a massive machine on the River Seine, a series of 14 giant wooden water wheels driven by the river's current.
14 of them.
14! Powering over 200 pumps just to push water up a hill and through aqueducts to feed the estate.
That is just insane effort for some water.
But that was the point. The king was essentially demonstrating that his power was so absolute, he could command nature itself to perform for his guests.
Which brings us inside the palace, where that show of absolute power gets even more extravagant.
Oh, definitely.
The crown jewel of Versailles, as our sources highlight, is the spectacular Hall of Mirrors. It's described as a Baroque-style gallery with 357 mirrors and a massive hand-painted vaulted ceiling.
Just breathtaking.
And just to clarify that for a moment, when we say Baroque, we mean it was dripping in heavy theatrical drama and gold ornament. Every inch was designed to overwhelm the senses.
And what's fascinating here is that the mirrors themselves were a weapon of intimidation.
Intimidation. How so?
Well, in the 17th century, mirror making was a tightly guarded monopoly held by the Venetian Republic. Glass was incredibly difficult to manufacture.
Right.
A single mirror could cost as much as a naval ship.
Wait, really? A ship?
Yes. So King Louis XIV smuggled Venetian glassmakers into France just to build this room. Surrounding yourself with 357 mirrors wasn't just a design choice.
It was a flex.
It was the ultimate geopolitical flex. It was a way of telling visiting dignitaries, I control the industry, I control the wealth, and I control the light itself.
Wow. And then there's Marie Antoinette. The sources describe her private escapes, which are a whole different level of luxury.
A completely different vibe, yeah.
You have the Grand Trianon, a leafy chateau she used to, as the guide puts it, recharge her social battery. Her private rooms had gilded ceilings, bejeweled cabinets, and tassels on literally everything.
She also had her own fairy tale cottage constructed on the estate, known as the Queen's Hamlet.
Right, to mimic a rustic farming village. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the sources mention Marie Antoinette's favorite pastime at that fairy tale cottage, and it is honestly my favorite detail of this entire deep dive.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Role-playing as a shepherdess with perfumed sheep. Let that sink in.
It's so absurd.
She had her staff wash and perfume the livestock so she could pretend to be a peasant. It is the 17th century equivalent of modern-day billionaire glamping.
That's a perfect comparison.
You want the rustic, authentic aesthetic of farm life, but only if the sheep smell like Chanel.
Right. And the underlying theme here is that the palace was explicitly designed by French royals to overwhelm and intimidate visitors with its sheer scale.
It was meant to make you feel small.
Exactly. The architecture, the endless gardens, the blinding reflections in the Hall of Mirrors, it was all psychological warfare disguised as hospitality.
That is such a great way to put it.
And ironically, centuries later, it is still overwhelming visitors. It's just doing it in a very different way.
Yeah, the intimidation factor is absolutely still there. It is just shape-shifted from royal majesty to, like, logistical dread.
Pure dread.
Which pulls us right into the dark side of our snow globe. Let's look at what actually happened in July of 2026. Because reading through these recent TripAdvisor reviews, it reads less like a travel diary and more like a disaster movie script.
It really does. The catalyst for this breakdown was a severe summer heat wave. We're talking about brutal 40 degrees Celsius temperatures.
Which for our American listeners, that is 104 degrees Fahrenheit, beating down on a stone palace.
Under a scorching sun with literally no natural cover.
Yeah, according to the people on the ground, the sheer chaos was unbelievable. We're looking at a complete breakdown of basic infrastructure.
It was a dangerous situation.
Take this review from a user named Inspire and 048163333274 from July 15th. They wrote, and I quote, "The management put nothing in place to protect vulnerable and elderly people from the heat wave. Results, people fainting and being taken away by the fire department."
The fire department having to intervene multiple times just to handle heat stroke cases among tourists waiting in a security line. It paints a very vivid, very alarming picture of the conditions outside the palace.
And the facilities inside were also failing under the pressure. A reviewer named Maxine M. noted that while the setting is magnificent, the restrooms were dirty and poorly maintained.
Which is unacceptable for a site like that.
She actually called it pathetic for a site receiving so many visitors. Another reviewer mentioned a faulty ladies' toilet near the entrance with a highly aggressive hostess. And when people finally made it inside the palace to escape the heat,
there was no relief.
Absolutely none.
The sources described the staterooms as being overcrowded and packed like cattle. A reviewer named Marta P. left a blistering one-star review calling the entire experience a legalized scam.
Her review perfectly captures the visceral frustration. She says, you pay 30+ euros to get into a chicken coop. Inside, you can't walk, you can't breathe, you can't see anything. The rooms are packed like cattle.
And then outside, it's just as bad.
Right. She goes on to say, outside 104 degrees Fahrenheit in 45-minute lines for the garden train. One single ticket booth closed for 20 minutes with no clear reason, zero shade, zero water, zero respect for elderly people and kids. They just let you roast in the sun like it's nothing.
This is where we really have to look at the geography of the estate again. That 45-minute line for the garden train is a crucial piece of context.
Because it's huge.
Right. Remember the sheer size we talked about? 2,000 acres. It is a massive physical distance between the main palace and places like the Trianon estate.
Yeah, you can't just casually stroll there.
Not when the heat hits 104 degrees. Navigating that footprint over reflective gravel paths without shade becomes actively dangerous.
We have another reviewer, CSL, who visited on July 14th with their family, and July 14th is Bastille Day.
Oh boy, the National Day of France.
Meaning absolute peak crowds. They talked about lines dozens of meters long, the fire department intervening yet again, and parts of the palace being unexpectedly closed.
Just a nightmare.
They specifically called out the management, saying, with the enormous amount of money circulating, nothing has been planned since the 2003 heat wave.
And that leads to the ultimate breaking point mentioned in the sources. Management's response to this extreme weather wasn't to provide water stations or shade canopies.
No.
It was to abruptly shut the site down entirely.
A user named Jean-Pierre R. left a review titled, Boycott Versailles this summer. He explained that management abruptly decided to close down the chateau at 4 p.m., and they completely stopped all entrances at 3:15 p.m.
Just completely locked it down.
Left advanced booking ticket holders completely stranded outside with no access, no explanation, no emails beforehand, and no one at the door to even talk to. They even completely closed the Trianon Marie Antoinette's escape due to the heat.
The fallout was immense. Jean-Pierre stated that as a French person, he was ashamed and angry at the incompetence.
I mean, I would be too.
He felt overwhelmed by the disrespect shown to visitors who had planned their trips months in advance.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. When you talk about the management's incompetence, I have to push back a little on behalf of the traveler here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If this is a world-renowned UNESCO World Heritage Site making massive amounts of money every single day, why is the crowd management so rudimentary? Like, reviewers are furious that they couldn't even set up a basic canopy to protect babies and the elderly in lines A and B. It's like a poorly run music festival.
That's a fair point about the canopies outside. But inside, that's a structural issue.
Right. When you talk about structural tension, I imagine you mean they literally can't just slap a window AC unit into a wall painted by a 17th century master. You can't just hide ductwork behind priceless tapestries.
That is precisely the mechanism at play. Reviewers understandably demand air conditioning in a 104-degree heat wave, but the building itself is the artifact.
It's not a modern museum box.
Exactly. Introducing sudden blasts of cold, conditioned air into a porous stone structure creates immediate condensation.
Oh, moisture.
Right. That moisture breeds mold, which immediately starts eating the original 17th century silk wall linings.
Yikes.
Furthermore, rapid temperature shifts cause 300-year-old wood paneling to violently contract and split.
So by trying to cool down the tourists, you would literally destroy the palace from the inside out.
It creates a fascinating logistical paradox. The modern travel industry operates on volume, but these centuries-old structures operate on fragility.
It's a terrible mix.
It is. As for closing the Trianon and cutting off entry at 3:15 p.m., while it was incredibly frustrating and disastrously communicated to the ticket holders, it was fundamentally a triage decision.
A safety measure.
When people are fainting and firefighters are actively treating heat stroke, limiting the number of bodies packed into an unair-conditioned stone building is a matter of immediate public safety.
It seems like a clogged hourglass. You have this massive volume of people arriving from this sprawling estate, and they're all being forced through one incredibly narrow, unventilated glass neck, the state apartments.
Everyone loses in that scenario.
Yeah, the tourists feel scammed, the staff are overwhelmed. I mean, one reviewer noted, the staff were talking to people like dogs, and the site itself is put under immense physical strain.
But this highlights the absolute necessity of strategic planning. Because mixed in with these disaster reports were visitors who successfully navigated the environment and had an incredible time.
Right. If the infrastructure is collapsing under the heat, what does a traveler actually do with their ticket? Because we know you still want to see it.
But of course you do.
You still want to experience the Hall of Mirrors. So we need to look at the tactical solutions for experiencing Versailles without having a miserable time. Let's start with the basic geography of the trip.
According to the sources, it is a 15-minute train ride from Paris.
Which doesn't sound too bad.
It doesn't. But the physical exertion doesn't end when you step off the train. It is another 15-minute walk just to get from the station to the palace gates.
And once you are inside the estate, as we mentioned, the distances are punishing. It is about a 30-minute walk between the main palace and the Trianon estate.
That explains those desperate 45-minute lines for the little train. People are exhausted before they even begin to explore.
To mitigate this, our sources point to a few strategies, including a very specific tour listing from ExcursionPass. They offer a guided tour with garden access, priced at €99 for adults and €85 for youth.
Let's look at what that €99 actually gets you. The listing promises an English-speaking guide for a focused 2-hour route through the staterooms and the Hall of Mirrors.
Okay.
After the guided portion, it includes self-guided access to the massive gardens, the estate of Trianon, and Marie Antoinette's Hamlet. They run regular 1:00 p.m. departures in the summer.
There is a very crucial caveat on that listing, though, that every traveler needs to absorb before booking.
It's bolded in the fine print.
Yeah, the listing explicitly states this is not a skip-the-line claim. Standard palace security, crowd controls, and site rules can still apply.
Which is vital transparency from the tour operator.
So what does this all mean? Looking at this from a traveler's perspective, I have to challenge the value proposition here. I'm looking at this listing and thinking, why pay €99 for a guided tour if you still have to stand and sweat in the exact same security line as someone who paid €41 for a basic admission ticket?
That's the big question.
You're paying more than double, but you aren't skipping the heat or the initial wait.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, to what those angry TripAdvisor reviews were describing, the true value of the €99 tour isn't about skipping the line outside. It's about surviving the chaos inside.
Okay, go on.
Remember Marta P., who said you couldn't breathe or see anything? In an environment that overwhelming, a human guide acts as a vital buffer.
Like a shield.
They manage your pacing. They know exactly which rooms to move through quickly and where to pause to let a bottleneck clear.
Oh, I see. They act like a designated driver for a chaotic party.
Exactly. They control your attention. Mass tourism destroys the very exclusivity that tourists are traveling to experience in the first place. The Excursion Pass isn't just a walking tour, it's a modern attempt to purchase a sliver of that lost exclusivity.
That makes sense.
By providing immediate historical context directly into your ear, a guide keeps your mind focused on the fascinating mechanics of the court rituals, rather than the sensory overload of 1,000 sweating tourists pressing in on you.
And looking at the advice from reviewers who actually had a good time, they echo this need for strategy. A reviewer named Luca gave his visit 5 stars in July.
A rare 5-star in July.
I know, right? He acknowledged the crowd, saying the rooms are really impressive and it's easy to see why Versailles is so famous, even with all the people. But his primary advice was to aim for an early morning entry time to experience it before the biggest wave of tour buses arrived.
Which is an interesting contrast to the Excursion Pass offering a 1:00 p.m. summer departure. A 1:00 p.m. entry puts you right in the heat of the day and the absolute peak of the crowds.
True. But the Excursion Pass does offer something that multiple reviewers claimed was the ultimate saving grace of their trip, the self-guided garden access.
That is huge.
A reviewer named Kathy Rocha from Brazil couldn't even get inside the palace due to the chaos, but she pivoted, explored the gardens, and still gave her day 5 stars.
Wow.
She described the gardens as simply wonderful sculptures, fountains, ambient music, and a charming atmosphere. It was an unforgettable experience.
Another reviewer, Salsacom from Italy, pointed out that while the indoor crowd management was entirely incapable, they spent much more time and more pleasantly in the gardens.
So maybe that is the ultimate travel hack for Versailles in the summer. Buy your ticket way in advance. Every single source agrees on that. Endure the indoor rooms for the sheer historical awe, but plan your day so that you spend the vast majority of your time out in the 2,000 acres of fresh air.
The self-guided garden access is arguably where the highest return on investment lies. It allows you to physically escape the human gridlock of the vaulted rooms and experience the scale of the estate on your own terms.
A trip to the Palace of Versailles today is fundamentally a tale of two extremes. On one side, you have breathtaking historical beauty, a place where French royals built a physical manifestation of their absolute power using smuggled glass makers and river-powered machines just to impress their guests.
And on the other side, you have a grueling exercise in modern logistical endurance.
Navigating the space between those two extremes requires an immense amount of preparation.
It really does.
The difference between a 1-star nightmare where you feel scammed by the heat and a 5-star memory that you'll cherish, Comes down entirely to being well-informed before you arrive.
Knowing what you're walking into.
Exactly. Knowing the actual walking distances, anticipating the lack of 21st century climate control, understanding that security lines are mandatory for everyone regardless of how much you pay, and having a definitive game plan for when the crowds get too thick.
As you process all of this and plan your itinerary, it raises a final, somewhat ironic thought to mull over. We go to Versailles seeking this ultimate royal experience. We try to walk in the footsteps of kings and queens by crowding into the Hall of Mirrors. But if a 17th century palace wasn't built to handle 21st century crowds, maybe fighting for breathing room in the center of the palace isn't the most authentic experience available to us anymore.
That's an interesting point.
Perhaps true luxury at Versailles today is doing exactly what Marie Antoinette did.
Escaping the suffocating masses of the court to find a quiet, isolated corner of those 2,000 acres. Finding your own private retreat away from the noise.
Exactly. The real power move isn't standing in the center of the room, it's having the space to step away from it.
I love that. So the next time you find yourself standing outside those golden gates, remember the snow globe. It's impossible to step inside without bringing the friction of the modern world with you.
The heat, the crowds, the logistical bottlenecks, they're all part of the landscape now.
But if you know how to navigate the cracks in the glass, if you know when to step away from the center of the globe and explore the expansive edges of the gardens, you might just find a piece of that history perfectly preserved, waiting just for you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.